based on ISO 31000. But there are about 7, 8 of them. Before internal auditors have understood one model, there are so many different ones. Also, we had until now ERM, and then comes another term called GRC. And people are saying, what's the difference between ERM and GRC? So, in this room, if I were to ask, how many know what is GRC? Don't worry, I won't ask you. Just say how many know. And how many know ERM? You've got your answer, right? There are about more than 200 people here, and I had a sprinkle of hands. So how are we going to do risk management and assurance and provide all that when we still don't know what this is? We have obviously not done enough to educate audit committee members about IA's role, expertise, etc. And sir, to answer your question about the selection process of audit committee, that could be one of the things we need to see, how to influence the board about selecting who should be audit committee members. Very challenging, take it from me, it is very challenging, because you'll have to first have another job in hand before attempting that. Okay? I recognize that, but I'm just putting forth what is the reality right now. Do we have all the answers? No. But by discussing it at such forums, if you take some of these thoughts with you, you will discuss it, right? And we will start the talk phase. That's the idea of this. We have not done enough to clarify to the board and management link between strategies and risks, so we have not helped them there. Research showed that. And our focus has been on auditing processes, operations, locations, rather than finding out what is your corporate objective. What are the risks to the corporate objective? Find that out. What is the mission, vision of your organization? What are the objectives, the strategies that the company has set to achieve that mission? And then the objectives, and then you will have better insight. And of course, the spate of frauds tells us that we are not doing enough in that area. So, what do you think is our assessment? I don't want to embarrass ourselves further by asking us to answer. Right? Anyone disagrees? Either yes or no? Okay, good. Now, what is it we need to walk about as far as risk assessment? I told you I'll give you a complete solution. Every audit report should highlight risk to specific business objectives. Yes, we will say the bank reconciliation was not done for 5 months, and we expect CEO to correlate that with his business objective. Right? In so many cases, the payment vouchers were not authorized. Is that our report? Is that the risk of incorrect payments? That's not the risk. Go higher up. What is the risk to the objective that you are trying to achieve? What financial exposure will it cause? Then, trust me, you will not have 2 minutes, not 5 minutes. You will have a regular meeting with your CEO, because he will consider you as someone he can look to tell him where he and his team is going wrong. Right? It's just a matter of taking what we have as our observations, bringing them to a higher level, connect them to a higher objective, and you see there'll be magic in your report. Even a 2-page report will do the trick that a 126-page report won't do. The audit universe. We tend to all define an audit universe and then try to do risk assessment. It should be the other way. Start with risk assessment of every area and then see from highest to lowest what are the risk areas. And show board, executive management a roll-up view at the year end of the high-level annual, in the annual report about what are the risks, etc. Okay, what do we need to walk about as far as governance and fraud risk assessment is concerned? In the corporate governance, we need to look at activities of the board and its committees. How many of us ask for minutes of the board to see what decisions are being taken? Once we have that, then we have to see how is it being rolled out? How is it being communicated? What is the understanding? How many of us do that? Because the board may decide something. If there is lost in translation, loss in understanding, what the management lower down might be doing may be totally misaligned with the corporate objective. What is the organization structure? Is it too bureaucratic? Is it too top-heavy? The process for establishing, communicating, cascading information, audit that to find out how information gets around. Fraud risk assessment. I'm not providing you a solution here. I'm going to talk about it in futuristic, prospect, because what I'm going to talk about is still a futuristic concept as far as many internal auditors are concerned, though some have started practicing it, and I'll tell you what it is. We in our organization are already at the talk stage of that. Okay? I would be lying if I say we've already implemented it and all that. Okay, just very quickly our key innovative methods to see how we fared. On control self-assessment, majority said we are not practicing it, internal auditors. Likewise for continuous auditing again, majority said no. So the rating is very obvious, only Talkstar. Now let's look at the fourth aspect. So far out of 4, on 2 we got star rating, on 1 we got only Talkstar rating, right? Now let's look at futuristic. They say energy flows where attention goes. So where do we need to draw our attention to? Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about auditing the most valuable asset in the organization, what does any typical internal auditor look at? Right? Anything which has a monetary value. And we are expert when there is a risk surrounding that, we are expert at coming up with recommendations to mitigate that risk. But think carefully, which is the most valuable asset in an organization? People. People. And when people have a risk surrounding it, which is perceived pressure, perceived opportunity, and inclination to explain away our actions, these are the 3 key risks which are around us. What do we internal auditors so far have been doing? Ladies and gentlemen, the PP, PO, and IR, these 3 things, do we ever talk about auditing human behavior? How many of you have attempted to audit human behavior? No one. This is what I meant by futuristic. And I even have some thoughts on how we can audit it. But as I said, even I am still at the talk phase. But I'm sharing this with you because more of us will talk about it. And it will gather momentum, right? I'm talking about auditing this fraud triangle, PP, PO, and IR. Now, how do you go about it? And again, these are just my thoughts, okay? You are free to try this out. You are free to write to me and share some more ideas if you have. I'm saying we need to perform assessment of the perceived pressure, opportunity, and inclination to rationalize for company personnel having significant authority. By that I mean people who are in a power, in a position where they can make rules, they can change rules, they can sign off, approve huge expenditures, influence huge revenues. These are people I call with significant authority. I'm saying start over there because that's where your risk is the highest. So how do you assess the PP, PO, and IR of such people? Now, before I continue, what I'm talking about is not entirely nonsensical or futuristic, because in March 11 issue of this magazine, Treasury and Risk, there was this article where the author said, company auditors will take on new responsibilities in coming years, focusing on governance, ERM, and behavior in the C-suite. He says they are going to be examining corporate governance, keeping an eye on top executives' behavior. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 10 years of the massive frauds that you've heard, how often was a computer responsible for a fraud? How often was a process responsible for a fraud? In every single case, it was a human being. And have we ever audited that? So, the most risky factor, we don't even talk about auditing. Forget looking at it. Don't even talk about it. And now I'm going to give you tips of how we can look at it. This is futuristic, as I said. Okay? So, I'm just going to show you some of the indicators of perceived pressure. This is not an exhaustive, but I would call it an inclusive list. Some examples. High degree of competition in the market. What does that do to people whose jobs are dependent on that they have to make sales? Their earnings are from commission on sales. And when there is market saturation, high degree of competition, what does that do? That puts up some kind of pressure on you, right? And under pressure, every human being, you don't know which way they may. You can't say with certainty, but a human being is more likely to be fallible under pressure. Significant decline in customer demand, again, that puts pressure on the company, on every single employee. Company will say they don't have money to pay salaries. They don't pay their suppliers on time. That puts pressure on you if you are in the accounting department, because you have to face abusive calls, right? But all of these things. Need to obtain additional debt, and there isn't enough finance for the company because of its credit rating. They are not getting enough debt. Marginal ability to repay debts, significant portion of employees' compensation based on this. These are some of the things. So when you are dealing with people in positions of significant authority, find out what are the risks that they are facing. And invariably, when they are talking, they will tell you, guys, sorry, I don't have time for auditing right now. Do you know what pressure I'm facing? Do you know what the competition is? You are telling me I'm reducing the revenue, I've cut down the rates, but do you know what it is? You take that information with you. This person is under pressure. That's first one aspect of the triangle. And as I said, this is only an indicative list. You can keep on building up on all such aspects which you believe put pressure on a person. Let me give you some indicators of perceived opportunity. When you have processes and controls which can be easily circumvented, or where you can't detect fraud, that gives opportunity. And if you have that, along with pressure, now you've got two aspects of the three aspects of the fraud triangle. High risk, or absence of quality and performance measures. If you don't have those measures, how do you know whether you are performing good or bad? Failure to discipline fraud perpetrators. The message is, it's okay to commit fraud, nothing will happen. Lack of or weak controls, etc. Lack of audit trails, and so on. Okay, as I said, these are just indicators. And the last one about inclination to rationalize. There are people who will provide very rosy forecasts. Okay, they look good in those meetings. But when their results are there, they are very dismal results. And why they didn't perform? So-and-so's fault. Never my fault. Yeah, I know we didn't fare well because so-and-so didn't do properly. The operations department didn't give us support. HR didn't give us the required manpower. These are people to watch out for. They will not take responsibilities for their actions. They will boast about benefiting the company. You know, I bribed that so-and-so and I managed to get this big contract. Do you know how much I've benefited the company? And foolishly, they will tell you that because they think they have done a great job. You know what? That supplier had billed us wrongly. I didn't tell him. See, I saved our company. What does that tell you about the character of the person who's saying that? So that should immediately set off a red flag in your mind. People who use tenure. I've been here for 26 years, big deal, so if I took one calculator home because my son wanted it. I am not exaggerating, you might laugh, but I know of someone who had put a reminder on the mobile, carry pencil box for son. From the office. And they said, I've worked for so many hours, I don't get overtime, big deal. What is a pencil box going to hurt the company? But today it's that, and then it goes higher and higher and higher. These are things to watch out for. These are the red flags. I covered this one already. They maintain a lifestyle which is not consistent with their income. They don't want to go on leave, and so on. If you put these three things together, if God forbid you come across a person who has all these three or who exhibits these, you've got someone there who's on the verge of cracking, right? And do we ever do something to audit them? Because it's they who do it. Enron at one time was a very successful company. They got award for good corporate governance. But obviously, something went wrong there, right? And no one saw that happening. Once you gather this on a matrix, plot it out by person in position of significant authority. Okay? At the top end of the scale will be, if you get very high, it will be very high risk, and low, it would be very low, and you'll have various permutations, combinations. But see one trend, inclination to rationalize. If you have a high inclination to explain away your actions, it will be either very high or high risk. But if you are very, very strong as far as integrity is concerned, even if PP and PO exists, there will not be fraud. Correct? It doesn't mean that everyone who is facing pressure, and if the systems are bad, they will go. No. There is something called personal integrity. But I'm saying that's what you need to track. Right? Now, on this basis, can I write a report? Therefore, so-and-so executive, so-and-so should be fired? No. That's why I say innocent until proven guilty. But what you will do, you will put that area as high risk. And you will do deep diving audit. While that's happening, your recommendations would be around putting ring fences. Make processes stronger. If there is single authority, have someone else. Have it checked. Do continuous monitoring in that area. Conduct focused analytical reviews. Continuous monitoring. And send reports to top management about this. As I said, it is a new concept. When I presented this in the US, the first question asked is, aren't we profiling? Can we get sued? You are not profiling the person. You are profiling the risk environment. And mind you, today, when I present this, I've made this presentation several times in North America also, and around the world. And today, people are actually listening. But I'm saying we need to talk more about that. So this is the first thing in the prospect, futuristic. The next thing we need to start thinking about is auditing boards of directors and audit committees, eligibility requirements. These are mandated by law, and if for any reason, innocently, they do not know that they are violating it, you'll be doing your board a favor to say, look, we have these directors, but as per this eligibility requirement, they don't qualify. Trust me, the management will listen to you. Because you're not talking about Mr. X or Y. You're talking about the status of that person. Right? So do that. Start that. Now, this is an interesting one. Certified internal auditor and allied qualifications. How many of you have a CIA qualification or any internal auditing qualification? Look around, how few? Now let me ask you, you are not feeling well. You have a doctor who is a qualified MD or a qualified surgeon, etc. And you have someone who says, I have general knowledge of medicine. Who would you go to? Who would you go to? Naturally. Would you risk yourself? Then why is it that our companies have to accept us as internal auditors without the proper qualification? Why should we accept it ourselves? That we know generally about auditing. Right? So I'm saying, get the qualification. One is to have business knowledge. The second one is to know what your profession demands of you. The combination is very powerful. Then you can give what you call a truly value-adding service. Otherwise, it's like a doctor who says, yeah, I have seen surgeries on TV. I know roughly. Wow. And we are supposed to entrust ourselves. So these are the people whom the directors are supposed to say, you are going to come and help us improve our business. Someone said, we were asked what are our qualifications and all. Rightly so. But today, if I'm qualified, I'll tell that person that I am an expert on risk management. I'm an expert on reviewing processes, controls, governance. So, yes, we can co-opt lawyers, engineers, etc., where required. As someone talked about co-sourcing. If you need some legal help, do that. But if you have to hire a lawyer in your department, convince that person to also get an auditing qualification. And then you see the power that you will get. That will be true value-adding service. Communication skills. Why I'm again putting it in futuristic. A lot was spoken in the earlier presentation on that. You know the IIA Global Survey, which even Shankar alluded to? Communication skill is the most important general competency. And yet, in our curriculum, CIA curriculum only talks about written communication skills, which is your report point should have condition, criteria, cause, consequence. But when that written report which you send is thrown away, where the client tells you to take it and stuff it, you know where? I mean the waste paper basket. Right? Right? What happens at that time? You walk across. You have a discussion. What decides whether that report is acted or not? How you interact. How you influence. Where is that taught in our curriculum? What are the courses for us to become effective communicators? Not there. Missing. So, there is need for IIA to publish educational material on that. That's what I'm talking again for our future. So, on the prospect, I've talked about auditing human behavior, auditing of board of directors committees, mandatory CIA, and oral communication skills. Ladies and gentlemen, on prospect, I cannot give ourselves any rating because on some of these matters we aren't even talking about it. The good news is today we have talked about it, so again give me a big smile. Aren't you happy we talked about it? Right? In conclusion, our perception, prominence, star rating. Product, talk star. Prospect, no rating. If we want to scale greater heights and from talk stars to rock stars, we need to do a lot more about our product and prospect. Prominence will continue to follow and perception will keep on improving. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be on eBay, by the way.
Thank you, Adil. In fact, I must formally thank him because he came specially for our session, that's all. In fact, he is an Indian, of course, but rarely comes to India. And I think in fact, I was really fortunate to see him making this presentation in our Boston conference of IIA. And you won't believe, generally by and large what happens, these are all side tracks. So you will see some typical rooms which are half empty. Number of times only just 2 or 3 rows are there. Here was a man looking at the interest, and everybody was talking in the morning. His room was changed to make it a bigger one, and that was again houseful. Me and Bhaskar, we were there, and then we thought, if we can catch this guy to our conference, it will do a great value addition. And it was indeed a great thing.
Thank you very much.
My personal thanks for coming all the way. In fact, he came late in the evening yesterday, and in fact, flying out in the evening immediately. So thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I hope in some small measure I've changed your perception about what we need to do. Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is a very, very brave person. A very brave person because it takes a very brave man to follow an act like Mr. Adil Buhariwala. So let's see who our very brave speaker is. He is a founding member of AuditTime, where he serves as Business Development Director. He has contributed to nurturing strategic partnerships with leading data analysis and audit management technology companies. He has deep experience in multiple domains like banking, capital markets, and the manufacturing segments. He renders comprehensive strength as enterprise risk expert and entrepreneur. He is a chartered accountant and a certified information systems auditor. To make a presentation on data analytics, please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Chetan Maheshwari.
Yeah. Good afternoon, all of you. Yeah, thank you so much. Before they get this thing set up for us, yesterday evening, late night, I got my reality check and I thought I'll share with you. Late night, my wife spoke to my son and said, Daddy ko wish karo, tomorrow he has a session, right? So wish him all the best. So he asked, Mummy, session means what? Session matlab kya? So she said, जैसे आपके क्लास में टीचर आती है और बात करती है, you are 45 of you who sit across, right? He's going to talk to 100 of them. His immediate reaction was, फिर all the best उनको बोलना चाहिए. So all the best. This is the message which comes from there, right? And I hope we'll do justice to this 30 minutes that we have together. Very difficult because, you know, probably now I have taken a synonym to data analytics, right? Most of them, they know me more like a data analyst rather than Chetan. So what I've done is, what we are going to do in this 30 minutes is probably spend the time on the journey that we have all done together in last 3 years, right? And we will see what we have done in 2010, 2011, what we did in 2012, and the way forward in a synopsis probably which will be helpful for all of us. Not talking about we as a company, I'm talking about you and I both put together. And let's look at the journey. So 2010, 9-10, I believed was the time when we looked at the concepts and challenges. You know, when we talked about analytics, when we were talking about workflow management, we were talking more from the concepts and the challenges that we were facing there. And these were some of the things that we discussed that time. Whether sampling is adequate, can we go to management saying we have done 5% of that, whether as on date, you know, we looked at things on March, whether that is something which is relevant, whether we have to look at on a continuous basis. We talked about whether we are looking at processes in a piecemeal, you know, PO sometimes in September, payment transactions in December, stock in March, whether that is comprehensive or we have to look end to end. Does IT really support audit? You know, do we really get the manpower, the budgets, the support that we really want from the technology department of our company? And do we really know where the risk is high, or, you know, we're still doing on the thumb rule based analytics or our audits? So these were some of the things that we discussed on analytics. We also discussed that by doing all this, can we provide management with the confidence level that we are looking at, right? So at the concept level, this is what we all discussed in greater depth. We also looked at some other concepts on the workflow, and we said that yes, are we really losing our time as an auditor? And if we really look at the areas, you know, we found that manual planning or manually managing the audits was really taking away a lot of time. The auditor-auditee response cycle was taking away a lot of time. The report consolidation was taking away a lot of time, right? Again, as a concept we discussed, we deliberated on these subjects, right? We also looked at as the auditor done or the audits are done based on the risk, or it is still on the thumb rule or a judgmental based activity. Do we have database of all the audits, right? The previous speakers mentioned about a lot of audits that you go through every year. The question is, do we have a centralized system which brings all these risks together and gives you a dashboards or kind of an information which says that, okay, this is the comprehensive risk score that we are looking at, and how effectively we are monitoring our own audits, right? Adil was excellent in bringing that out. So as a concept, we looked at this. We looked at in past, where we talked about data analytics, sampling, and so on and so forth. We looked at the workflow, the way we are working. In 2011, we looked at the approach. Okay, so these were the challenges, and we understood, okay, these are the challenges. Now look at the approach. Let us look at the tools which are available for supporting us if these are the challenges that we really believed. And then we introduced the maturity model, right, where we say that why don't you take steps as you move along in your organization, right? So this was more from the analytical point of view, where we said, okay, why don't you start in small, do some work within your environment, and then take it to the next level of auditing, continuous auditing, and then take it to the maturity curve of continuous monitoring, right? And we spent a lot of time last year. I remember the session, right? We had a complete 45-minute discussion on this subject, on how we can scale up from level 1 to level 5 and really bring continuous monitoring into reality. Then we also looked at what is the enterprise-wide risk and audit management solutions, and what are the pillars or the components of these solutions, right? We looked at audit planning, we looked at audit management, we looked at risk and control, and as Adil also mentioned, most of the organizations are moving on control self-assessment now, where to know the risk prior to starting the audit so you can have better coverage, right? And then of course the issue tracking, the records, and how you can manage the auditor-auditor response cycle. So last year, we did a lot of this, where we really looked at the challenges, and then we say, okay, these are the tools or the solutions which are available, which can deliver these kind of results to us, right? This year I thought, let's look at the tangible results, right? Bahut gyan ho gaya. Let's really look at what have others achieved. And if you really look at what we are presenting also on our booth is case studies, right? Because what is important is to look at tangible results and the shift that this has brought to the organizations. And we have taken examples all from India, right? The kind of work that we have done, we have got some examples from banking, we have got it from the corporates. Essentially is to correlate, is to see that what we are talking is really something which can be delivered or not. And these are some examples, and I'm sure when we discuss on these examples, we can also get answers to some of the questions which were raised during the day on how can we be more effective in talking to management. How is it possible for us to really become partner to our top management, and so on and so forth. Let us look at these results. I have taken some examples only for illustrative purpose, right? These are live cases. I have taken away the names, please excuse me on that. But these are the fact sheets which are in front of us. So P2P, purchase to pay as a process, identified bottlenecks in the PR, PO, approval, GRN, and what the company has to say is more than 25% of the purchase orders were open for more than 90 days from the purchase requisition to the goods received. Right now, I really don't know, and I don't want to make a comment myself whether this is a relevant information for you as an auditor or not, but if I really look at those who are into businesses where the price of the material keeps changing, then having a PR and then getting a goods after 90 days can have a material impact on the price that we are looking, when we decided when we wanted to procure or when the PO was raised. So if I look at from an accounting point of view, everything is right. The PR is there, the PO is there, the goods have come, right? It was for 1 lakh rupees which flowed all through properly. But when I look at the scenario, and if it it's a laptop which I had to purchase after 90 days, probably I would have got it for more than or probably 10 to 20% less price than what I would have raised the purchase order probably 90 days back. Right? So this is an information which probably can be relevant when you take your discussions forward with the management. IT application control compromises, most of us, we have the best of the systems in place and we believe that they deliver what we are looking in for. But some of the examples which probably will help you realize the reality, which is POs over USD 15 million created prior to the purchase requisition itself. We may have explanations from the management. I am not saying that all this cannot be explained. All that I am saying is it possible for an auditor who is using the traditional techniques of doing the audits be in the position to come out with these kind of exceptions, especially when we are looking at sampling as a solution, Changes to PO worth $0.3 million after the posting of the GRN and the invoice itself, right? So these are all backdated transactions which have gone into your system. Now we believe that the systems are foolproof and they are taking care, and we had some session today in the morning talking about systems audit and things like that. But again, a very surprising facts that can come out. Master analysis. I don't know how many of us really do the master analysis. We are more focused on the transactions, but some very interesting results there. Over 5% of the material masters were duplicate. Right? We also found another case where an organization, the material masters were not synchronized. The names given were always different, which did not help them to compare the prices on which they were purchasing in the organization. Over 250 duplicate vendors identified. Now, how big this risk can be is something for all of us to realize and to really look at whether this is material enough for the business or it is not, right? But these are tangible numbers. These have come from the case studies that we have run for our customers. Over 1,400 vendor codes were blocked and then unblocked, right? If you have to look at all these examples, the question keeps repeating, how do I come to these kind of observations, right? Is it possible manually? Is it possible without the use of some type of tools within the organization or help of technology for us to come at these kind of observation levels? $6.5 million of material delivered in excess of the PO issued, right? And this organization that I'm talking has been in business for more than 20 years. So this is not that they just started their business and this is something out of the blue that they came up with, right? 5.4 million are likely duplicate bills. Never ever in their audits prior to what they achieved in 2011-12 using the tool, they had these kind of observations. Identified price variations as compared to previous purchase price. Now, how do you compare so many line items that you have? How do you compare prices of those? How do you distinguish between the materials if the material masters are not synchronized? All the questions have one answer, right? We need to advance to something which can really deliver us. Now, this is also to be correlated with when you take these kind of exceptions to the management, will they give us better hearing? Or when we take some of these and say we have done it on a sampling basis, they will give us the better hearing, right? This is what will bring, according to us, the meat in the subject that we are looking at. Some more examples just to highlight. Over 0.5 million identified in limited reviews, where the prices of the traded materials were sold at negative margin. Over 900 sales order valuing $10 million were backdated sales order. Very common practice that we find that the minute the organization's central system changes the prices or increase the prices, and as he rightly mentioned, Adil, that you have to find out those individuals who are encouraging or getting into these practices, right? Analytics will help you to find out those individuals, those processes, those areas where the compromises are taking place. Now, look at $10 million where backdated sales order were done just because they had made promises to the customers that we will give you at the price which was prevailing prior to the change that has taken place in the system. Everyone within the organization felt that since it is centralized system and nobody can change the price, they believed that the new price is what has been published, but what these intelligent people could do is go backdated and issue the sales order, which were probably about 20 days to 21 days prior to the change in the price list. Another interesting thing is change the place of the shipment or ship to location, right? So prices have changed in Gujarat, not in Kerala, to ship it from there. Show that the invoices are from Kerala, not from Gujarat, get the same price benefit to the organization, right? Now, how do you get these kind of informations off in front of you so that you can take very strongly to the management? And probably the discussion that we had on talking about the resources and the human component coming live, probably these are some of the discussions which can help you bring those subjects also in discussion with the management. Auditors are changing the roles, and we have been talking about that. If you look at the last two bullets, it talks about identifying irregularities in the cases of cancelled, uninvoiced sales order, product wise, salesman wise, so on and so forth. So auditors are now transforming. With the use of tools and technologies, now you can really transform and do something which is not the debit and the credit aspect, or not looking at only the risk from the so-called perceived internal control point of view. You are also looking at where products are doing good, right? What salesman wise, what is the analysis, what is the commissions that they are giving, how much of discount is giving, who is giving the most discount within the organization, who's not giving, right? And all that is possible. This builds the intelligence that can really come handy when you're dealing with the management. Identify sales outlet which are over dependent on few selected customers. Now this is nothing but customer profiling to find out if we are really under the clutches of some customers and we are bent in doing businesses with them, right? Some very simple examples. Another area that we discussed some time back was on the workflow, and I want to share some examples from the workflow as well. What has the audit workflow and the risk management solution done? One of our customer has given this, and they believe that about 25% of the man hours have been saved in the monthly activities that they are doing. Now why do they believe that they have saved 25% of the critical mass that is sitting here? Lot of mundane works that we do manually can be taken care by the systems here. Your reports, your consolidation of the work, the efforts that you put in only structuring, only bringing these informations together and delivering as a report, all can be taken care by the technology that is available today, right? The structured approach also reduces the duplication in the effort. Someone is doing something, someone is doing something. Now it's a centralized system, and you can really look at what's happening for the audit as a whole. If you look at the lead auditor's time is also managed pretty well, because now they are in the position to look at multiple audits at the same time. My earnest request is, these are live cases. Please, if you feel that we have to discuss one-on-one more about these, why we have taken this or selected this as a subject is because we believe this has been delivered, right? It is no longer a concept or a tool or a technology which has been done somewhere else, and whether we can get benefit out of that, whether this is achievable, not achievable, this is reality. 25% of your resource time saving is reality. Enhance audit coverage by 20%, right? Adil just mentioned that look at the risk and then do the audit, rather than doing the audit and then looking at the risk. How do you look at the risk if you don't have a system which talks and really gives you that information? Coverage has been improved by 20% only by introducing a particular technology. This itself is a phenomenal way of looking at things. Auditor, auditee, management, all on one system in seamless workflow, reducing gaps and increasing visibility. This is what is important. We have been talking about how do we bring all of them together, how do we increase our communication, how do we become friends to them, and so on and so forth. And right, you don't have to do rocket science to do all this. All that you need to do is bring some transparency and say this is what it looks like, right? And if it's a common platform, everyone is on that same platform. They log in and they look in as you log in and you look into the system. Last, which is also a very interesting observation that came from the case study, is it has increased the enthusiasm and help retain young talent with the use of technology, right? So, the young talent, they love this, right? They are technology savvy and they want to use technology in the day-to-day activities. Not only that, it has helped organization in their succession planning. Now, when your knowledge, when your information, when your intelligence comes into a centralized repository, this is the place where you build your knowledge and the succession planning, right? Something which is again a very important component as far as the organizations who believe that this is the phase in which their churning is going to happen now. So the newer talent is more attracted towards technology, which is good, and they have seen that this has become as a retention point, right? Wahan pe nahi hai, hamare yahan pe hai, come, which is good, right? At the same time, this has also helped in succession planning. So if someone is going, bring that knowledge into the system, this can probably help to take it to the next level. So 2010, we looked at concepts and challenges. 2011, we looked at tools, the approach towards those concepts and the challenges. 2012, we looked at the results and paradigm shift. So 2013, what's next? Right, some questions again, that's our practice. But what we saw from the Thomson Reuters survey, right, all of us have been talking about surveys today, right? So what next? And they believe that the key challenge for the year ahead are the top 4, which is increased focus on the risk and control, changing business model, insufficient skilled resources, and the need to implement more preventive controls. Now, if you look at all these four, the challenges that the auditors are facing, this is from the Thomson Reuters Audit Survey 2012, probably we believe that the answers are in implementing some kind of tools or technologies which can really help, assist, bring all of these questions or challenges into the actions which can be delivered through what we are talking. Last, I'm not going to take the time off from your tea, so you know I'm running a little fast on that. But these are some of the questions which I love to leave with all of you, right? Do we have sufficient buy-ins? We find that most of the time, we find that the top management, despite the CAE or the organization wants to get in, they don't get enough buying within the organization. Can we integrate this with the risk management efforts? Right? These are again some of the questions which keeps coming in. Does it give quick tangible results? Is the ROI achieved? And I mean, with the examples that we saw, I don't think it will take more than a quarter's time to receive or to achieve your ROI. Does the audit automation really helps? I mean, we saw empty number of examples on that. Continuous auditing to continuous monitoring. You mentioned, right, catalysts to enable continuous monitoring, right? And analytics are encouraging and relatively inexpensive. So what we want to summarize today in the discussion, that you know, we looked at concept, we looked at how this can be achieved, we looked at results, right? Now let us look at these questions and let us really see that if we are in the trap of these questions, and if you believe that we can find answers through the help of tool, I'm sure that you know, we all can also become rock star, right, with the help of these kind of technologies there, right? Thank you so much, right, for this time.
Of the internal auditor as a leader in multicultural teams. To moderate the panel discussion, please put hands together and welcome on stage our moderator, Mr. Tapan Ray, Executive Director, Risk Advisory Services, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Western Region, and he's the leader for the mining industry, PwC India. Ladies and gentlemen, your moderator, Mr. Tapan Ray.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I take this opportunity to thank IIA Bombay chapter and also introduce my fellow panelists. First of all, let me introduce you to Mr. Chakrapani. Mr. Chakrapani, please be on stage. Mr. Chakrapani has over 30 years of experience. Currently, he is Senior Executive Vice President and Country Head, Audit and Vigilance, HDFC. Thank you, Mr. Chakrapani. Next on is Sumita Bose-Roy, again, over 30 years of experience, and currently Executive Director Audit, Bharat Petroleum. Last but not the least, I have with me my fellow partner from UK, David Bishop, coming all the way from UK for this session, and David has just landed about 2 years back, 2 hours back, and thanks, David, to be on the session. Just to give you a little bit of brief, Mr. Chakrapani has, before HDFC, has been with Bank of Baroda, Stanchart, and from 1994, he has been with HDFC. Obviously carrying wealth of experience. Sumita has been working extensively in various facets of operations, like in international trade, HR, finance, and is a regular speaker in international conferences. My friend David Bishop is actually one of the founding members of the Risk Assurance Services in PricewaterhouseCoopers, UK, over 25 years of experience. And he also is a relationship partner in two large multinational companies. One of them, incidentally, happened to be from India. David has been coming to India for the last more than a decade now, and obviously has been working in with international teams. So thank you all, and thank you everyone for this, for coming here. Before I start, myself, Tapan Ray, I lead the risk advisory services in PricewaterhouseCoopers Western region. Having worked in Eastern India, having worked in Northern India, and having worked now in Western India. Before this, I've done assignments in Thailand, Australia, Zambia, etc. So that, I think, makes me qualified to be, and that prompted Bhaskar to ask me to moderate this session. Thank you very much for this honor. Before I start, few anecdotes would be helpful, because I know after Adil's session, which was post-lunch, that couldn't have been a better session than a rocking session. I can't promise that this will be a rocking session, but at least I'll make it worth a try. But it's a hard act to follow, but I'll definitely I haven't said yo in number of years, but when I come home, I see my 18-year-old. She doesn't say welcome home or anything. She will just say, yo, come back home, good to be back. So it's different, things are different. I have worked in Thailand, and there they say, Swastika. In Australia, when I was in Australia, I remember that hilarious incident. Today it brings a smile, but that time I was quite ashamed, and I go back 1993. How many of you have worked in Australia? Oh, I can see few hands. One day, it was my initial, first month, and one of my colleagues, actually, it was 4 o'clock in the evening, and he looked at me. That was the first time he looked at me that day, and he said, how are you going, Tapan? I looked at him and said, what is he asking? How are you going, Tapan? How are you doing, Mike? Without offense to anybody, and I couldn't understand. I went about explaining to him how I would go back home, So I said, okay, I will get down, I'll take the Dandenong train, I'll go to the city, and from there I'll catch a bus, and that is how I go home. He looked at me, he couldn't believe me, He couldn't believe me, and he thought, who is this guy who has come from India who doesn't understand? It took me almost 3 months to understand the accent the Australians speak, which they call it English. I thought it was something different. I would come home, cry almost every day, where have I come? But once I knew the country, once I got hang of it, and I realized with the Australian-Indian cricket rivalry, that became a great leveler, And once I knew about things like Australian rules, football, I knew they are a sporting nation. That actually helped me bridge a lot of gaps, in terms of building relationship, in terms of working with the team. With that, and today the topic of discussion couldn't have been much more of greater challenges, because geography, as they say, is history. But having done that, but it also throws up its own sets of challenges, because when globalization taking place, you know that economic borders are coming down, but there are other kind of barriers which keep coming up, and these are, these mainly relate to the realm of, interpersonal skills, knowing a different countries, the language, the communication, the behavior. Adil spoke about those. So that assumes a lot of importance. Having said that, I would now, and you also know, it's not just about Indian companies over the last years going abroad. It's also about MNCs coming to India because of investment opportunities that they see in India. We also see that, because of cost arbitrage, we see lot of MNCs, the chief audit executives of international companies coming to India to do shopping for internal auditors because they know the skill set is there, because they know they are highly qualified, because they know that this is an English-speaking nation. So they come to India to man there because they don't want to have a full-fledged team. So they would like to recruit from India, and they would also like to recruit from the firms so that they can go and work overseas. Of course, there is one commonality I find there. When they come shopping for, secondment opportunities working, I find one thing very common. It's about the fees. They always try to bring the fees down, it can go about, it can be, that commonality is there. But that also opens up opportunities for us. It also opens up opportunities for Gen Y, as they call it, because everyone wants to go abroad. So today, my first trip overseas was when I was 33. Today, when you're 22, you're going overseas as a qualified professional. So there are nuances that you need to be aware of. For internal auditors, because they work as teams, this assumes tremendous importance. For the fact that today, we see so many Indian companies having global footprint and wanting to have a common thread across the organization, be it any part of the world. So it is important that the mergers and acquisitions, which we call the post-deal integration, becomes of greater importance. With that, I will turn to Mr. Chakrapani here, and I would request him, because he has been involved in acquisitions in the past. So whether it is just not about process integration, it is also about cultural integration. So Mr. Chakrapani, would you like to share with us some of the experiences that you have had, and whether cultural integration is something that you cannot ignore and it is of paramount importance, and what you think has worked? What are the good practices, if you could share with the audience, please?
Thank you, Tapan, and good afternoon to everyone here. I'm happy to be here and share my thoughts and experience with you. First and foremost, it's very coincidental that today's topic, which is, say, multicultural and challenges of integration from an internal audit thing. I work for HDFC Bank, and I've been working for the last 18 years. And coincidentally, there's a book which is going to get released shortly on 24th November, which is A Bank for the Buck, written by Tamal Bandopadhyay. Which uniquely, if you see today's live mint paper, there's a 2-page article on the book which is going to get released on HDFC Bank, and which also talks about the untold story of HDFC Bank. Very topical about what is being referred. When you talk about mergers, it's not about process integration, it's more about people integration, cultural integration. I just read out few things before I start commenting and giving my experience, which is directly from the book, and nothing, I've just, it's come, as I said, it comes in the today's mint edition. Typically in any merger, integration of people is as important as integration of business, if not more. By making Mandeep the head of human resources, HDFC Bank sent a strong signal that it believed in a fair process of evaluating people. I think it has come very handy to me to be talking about this.